We went to 5 buildings, and 2 of them pre-renovation, and 3 of them post-renovation, as well as the restaurant, which was also renovated, and post-renovation. So that was very impressive. It just shows what can be done.
An inspirational day, and it's filled me with loads of energy and enthusiasm.
The women were the greeters, were the kind of welcomers, and really running the show.
Yeah. To see that they're leading the way when it comes to renovations and kind of spreading the message of how we can build.
They're literally leaders, yeah. So. Great. Is having the energy. If you have someone who's lacking the energy for it, you're never gonna kind of entice people to get involved or anything like that.
I think an important part was that they were all female.
Yeah, they were all female guys. And that's actually a great point for the project as a whole.
They were
really inspirational to see how communities have kind of taken what were disused in buildings that were nearly in disrepair, and how communities, through working continuously and using different funding streams, have renovated the buildings and renovated them to a really high standard. So now that they're really nice spaces for the communities to use, and then to hear the success of these community buildings and how they now have a really integral part of the community, where the community come to play bingo, or where they come to get the Meals on Wheels food, or where the food is prepared to go out to the schools. So these community buildings are really key focus points.
Seeing communities coming together and like building a little hive for themselves, and like even the place we went to where they do the Meals on Wheels and they give stuff to the schools and they do so many things. And then the Wheelchair Association was amazing as well, because the work they do and the little houses around, building a little community for some people who might have been isolated had they been further out. So yeah, really is great.
The most thing I was impressed with was the contrast between the pre-renovation community centres and the post-renovation. The ones that had been fully renovated were so comfortable, just noticeably comfortable. Whereas, we did first when we went to pre-renovation, you could smell the dampness, you could feel it, so the difference, it's like, it's such a contrast. I didn't know there was so many schools, so many community centres, but I'm very impressed with what Orla has done, over the time, the amount of work that has been done, with all these community centres, and the way they have revived communities. We looked at one where it was shut down and wasn't needed, and then they came along, they renovated, and now it's thriving and it's full, people, bingo, people going to the gym, all kinds of organisations, meetings, So it has revitalised the community, I believe, the work that has been done.
The more of these I go to, I feel like the more I'm starting to understand things.
Thinking back on all the things, it's great if you could get a community together to do these things, and work together. But it just shows what can be done, I suppose. Another thing, all the information about funding and these things, like, it's very good, I think. A great day, really.
Moving on, there's always more to be done, so it's an onward journey, but it's possible, so from today I've learned that communities are doing it, so for me to relay that onto my own sustainable energy communities, to let them know that this can be done, it's incredible.
So today we're running a study tour of a number of communities' facilities in Erris, County Mayo. Erris is quite a large region. It covers about a geographical area the size of County Louth. We have 10,000 people, and that's actually the size of our sustainable energy community here. Closest town is Belmullet, so we cover a huge area. So Ballycroy is the first place of our stop, and this community centre was part of our energy master plan last year that we completed. We've completed a full energy audit, and they've subsequently received €200,000 in funding. So there's a major retrofit plan for this centre. We'll see a number of centres later on today where the retrofits have already happened. So it's nice to see the comparison of before and after.
Second, if anyone wants to come. We're unveiling a new piece of art to commemorate the Hall's 40th anniversary. So
we launched the energy master plan here
Yes.
Yeah, with our TD
Yeah.
Roscommon Walsh.
Yes.
So it's a brilliant community location.
Yeah, we're very lucky. We are very lucky.
Tell us the background behind this. Who
This-
made it?
This was made by the Ballycroy Sewing Group. It was made in 2013. So it was to commemorate, I think, the gathering at that point. I wasn't living here at the time, but it was all of the different community groups actually sewed a panel for themselves or had someone help them sew a panel.
Wow.
So it's all of the schools, all of the little clubs, everything like that. And in turn, all of those clubs would use this building for something throughout the year, even if it's fundraising, something as basic as card games for the schools. It's always used, so that's why, and it's 40 years old this year at the community centre, so that's why we have to make sure that it's good for the next 40 years and make sure that we're sustainable. And that's our main effort our main focus is that we're sustainable, especially being so in the national park as well.
Yeah.
Even outside the grounds, our first little move you might see is our new little bicycle stand to try and encourage some more active travel within the community. And yeah, that's it. It's a work in progress. There have been a lot of really good people working before us.
So the lady that was just in, Bernadette, she's the chair of the committee, and construction, they've gone to tender, all of their quotes are back, they're choosing their contractor at the moment. So construction will start here in the next 2 weeks.
Great.
So if we came back here in 12 months' time, we're going to see a huge difference.
And what are the things that she mentioned were important to change?
So they're going to change the roof, put in more insulation. They're going to internally dry line the actual building, new floors, new toilets, new kitchen for the Meals on Wheels. So a substantial retrofit.
It's a huge thing.
I hope the 200,000 is enough.
Yeah, but it was well worth it to try and save the building.
Yes.
And to do what we can.
Yes,
conserve.
and make sure it lasts for the next 50 years.
That's right, yeah. Rather than build something new.
Exactly. Exactly. The place where we're going now is Bangor Hall, and this story is absolutely incredible because before we retrofitted it back in 2014, the hall was actually nearly closed down. It was in a state of disrepair that it wasn't really able to be used. Since we did a major upgrade there in 2014, it has now become the life and soul of Bangor. It's used 7 days a week. The local committee run bingo twice a week, so they've actually got a cash inflow now, and you'll see a big difference, a huge difference in this building.
In reality, I think actually when they actually came back and put a kitchen in behind it, which was an additional piece of work, I think that would have given it a bit of a soul. Do you know what I mean? Whereby people could get some food when they needed it, and then there was heat there and that type of thing, and it just made it more livable in.
So now it's a real good community centre.
Community centre where people can sit down, have a cup of tea or whatever, all that kind of good stuff. Do you know what I mean? Well, I think the fact is that it was so derelict beforehand, and the fact that you would look at it and say, well, listen, the powers that be would have to nearly think of knocking this down if we couldn't have any alternative way of making it work. So that's something that I think is fantastic, because oftentimes when that kind of thing happens, these buildings never get replaced. And so you should be looking to repurpose existing buildings wherever you can.
So literally gave the building a brand new lease of life. Following that upgrade, a new committee came on board, of which Breach Carolan is our main contact, and the committee really came together. And now it's open 7 days a week, it's used 7 days a week, they run bingo 2 nights a week, and the hall is, it looks like it was bingo last night, the hall is absolutely filled to the top with the bingo, and they're making so much money that they actually have a little cash fund now that they can use to fund other projects around the community. It was closed, it was effectively closed. On the day, the whole community came in. Like, we had the Irish dancing class, the local primary schools, Duncan was spinning everybody around the place like he's a lunatic, but it was just a lovely way to launch the community centre for the rest of the community then. So it's just had a new lease of life, and the committee are absolutely delighted. We probably could come back, following what you said earlier on, we probably could come back for a second shoot through some of the buildings to see what else is needed, but as you can see, it's really comfortable, really warm, dry, like, I mean, everything was internally dry lined. They took up all the flooring, they replaced all of the radiators, like, it really was an extensive upgrade, it was amazing.
The full price there, 45,000, was the total cost of works. So you would bet 50% against that.
Yeah.
Most of it there was internal installation, there was about 22,000 on that.
Wow.
Yeah, ceiling installation, another 5,000. The double glazed windows, 7.5. Boiler upgrade, 7.5. And the lights, about 3.5.
I really liked the whole story of that. They'd kind of given up on the building. They didn't really want it anymore. It was closed down. They renovated it, and from that renovation then they built on that further, and then they like extended what they had there, and now it's literally such a hive of activity. Like they said, they do plays there, they play bingo there, and like it's literally the centre of the community. And had they not done those renovations, that wouldn't have happened, and all that like goodness came from doing from retrofitting and renovating that building. So I think that was kind of my favourite story of the day. I thought it was nice.
The Irish Wheelchair Association. I know that they have their building was built relatively recently, so it didn't need an awful lot of actual, let's say, insulation refurbishment. But they did incorporate the solar PV, and the service that's delivered there is fantastic. Like, you know, that's a life-changing service for a lot of people. You know, so I think that getting away from energy, that's quite inspirational in itself. You know.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure to show it off. Like, we're very proud of it.
Yeah. So this was installed back in 2015 as part of SEAI's Community Energy Programme. The same with the schools and the hall that we've just seen. Okay, so because it was such a new build, there was very little we could do when we did the audit. So the most obvious thing to do was to put in some form of generation. PV was absolutely ideal. Why didn't we put it on the roof?
Wind risk, I think, was too high at the time. That the wind comes from that direction and would have been probably safer, they said.
Okay, perfect.
We had the ground. I suppose that was the other side of it.
Yep, so we'll see the array now in a minute. So you can see the live feed here. This was operational since November 2015. There was a panic. The whole entire system. So at the time, SEAI were running annual funding programs. So there was a panic to get everything commissioned and overlooked and inspected by the end of the year. So it eventually went live in November. There was a bit of a panic because we were running out of time. So this has been working. Please tell me if it doesn't work, because it's really important that we know the system is working. So as you can see, it's generated over 82,000 units since November 2015 and saved over 46,000 kilograms. What's that, 46 tons of CO2? That's incredible, absolutely incredible. Bills?
Exceptionally lower, yeah, great.
Big difference.
Yeah, a big difference.
Last couple of years have been a big saving too.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
This was the first planning permission in Mayo for solar PV.
Okay. You did
We did two of them at the same time. And because this was a charity, we got the planning permission in for free.
Excellent.
So it was the first planning permissions for solar that Mayo County Council had actually seen, and they went through no bother.
And analyse the bills to start, and ideally put an electrical a monitor on your electricity meter to get real-time consumption, see what impact your existing solar PV is having, and then you can see if there's room for more solar PV. That's the best way to do it. Well, first I'd recommend to assess how much they're using of the solar. If they feel that they could still add some and self-consume some of that addition, then it'd be worth investigating that, going into that investment. Yeah.
The woman in the cafe place, she's such a great, and you can see why she is the centre of that community centre, because she is just like, do you know what I mean? She's just a great people person. I'd say that goes out to all the staff there and goes out to all the members who use the facility as well, and I'd say that's why she's so successful there with the pods and all the different things, and it's really important to have those people at the centre of these kind of projects, isn't it?
This community centre was upgraded as part of our 2014 SEAI Better Energy Community Programme. We did attic insulation, cavity insulation, we did an electric van for their Meals on Wheels, and we installed, as you can see behind me, 7 kilowatts of PV. So it was a pretty extensive retrofit. We invested about €45,000, and we've just spoken to the manager, and they're actually going to install more solar PV, so happy days, it's amazing.
Very brave enough to put this solar on the roof.
Yes. Well, you see, in this area, you won't get the sun very often. So you'd have to have those panels there to catch the sunlight, as you can see today. It's just, it reflects completely on them.
Yeah.
So it'll be powered well from that.
And so in the storms, there was no...
No problems whatsoever. Right. No, and we do get bad storms.
Yes.
Yeah.
How long have they been up?
Since, I don't know, is it 2014, 2015? Yeah, around that time. So about 8 years, yeah. A lot of storms. We've had Ophelia and we've all those other storms. So it has lasted a long time. Yeah. We and like usually wind will go, storm will go under, but it hasn't touched them. It hasn't even moved them. So yeah, yeah.
Installed cavity insulation, attic insulation, joist level insulation, and then after that was PV and the van. So we did a lot of building retrofit as well and upgrades just to make sure that the envelope was efficient as well.
There was a bit of a contrast in the value in the different places. One particular place would be maybe cost 10 times, 12 times as much as the other, and they were both equally well done. I understand. So I suppose value for money would be an important one.
A complete renovation on the hall, and we've also developed a GTEC hub since, where we've 20 desk spaces for remote working, and we're up to half full at the minute. And then during the summer we found that it was very busy with tourists in the area that wanted to do a couple of days work maybe, and they were able to do that from here, so it was great. In the co-op as well ourselves, we have Blacksad Lighthouse developed, so it's a lease from Commissioner of Irish Lights to the Mayo County Council, and they've given us a licence to operate it for guided tours. So we opened that in August 2021, just after COVID, kind of during COVID. So that's going really well at the minute, and we're also developing the building down here, which was the old Heritage Centre. You've seen it on your way in. It's now called Solace. So we're near completion, getting there slowly but surely. But we're hoping it'll be completed maybe by the end of September. But we're running into, I suppose, the off season now, so it'll really kick off from next season. So Solace, it's a visitor hub, a tourism hub.
Yeah.
So there'll be 3 gallery spaces in it. There'll be a cafe in it, a retail unit with like a type of Gaelic showcase, where we'll be showcasing products and crafts from the other Gaelic areas as well, and an innovation space upstairs where there'll be office space for the team, and then rental spaces as well available with a boardroom. Yeah, so we're hoping it will be a success and draw more visitors to the area. So we'll see, hopefully.
Excellent. No, it's fantastic.
Completion by the end of September, so we will have a soft opening with the minister down, and maybe just hold the odd event throughout the year until maybe next March, and then open fully then next March and have an official opening.
Brilliant. Tina, in terms of the retrofit that happened here, because we're really doing like a study trip of retrofits, how are you finding the heat pumps, the PV? How are you finding in terms of it working and comfort levels?
Comfort levels is great. The heat, say during winter months, like the operations of it is great. Obviously in the hall itself, it's a big building, but say if you have events in there, the heat, like the insulation was put on the walls in the renovation, so it makes a huge difference to how it was before. The PV panels on the roof, then so all the office spaces they're operated through them. At times you find it expensive, at times, during the summer months, obviously the bills are second to none, but it's, obviously I wasn't here in the beginning when they'd done all the fit out of it, but easy to operate, and then I suppose with people on call as well, if you do have any issues, that they're there. No, I find it works well, yeah. And down in the new centre too, we have the PV panels, we have the air to water and the underfloor heating as well.
Excellent.
Down there, yeah. So. Is that a brand new build? There's one section of it that's an old build that was built in '95, but all the rest of it kind of fits in well because the granite that's on it is the same granite that was used, so it blends in well. But there's a small section of it that's the old building. Leader funded and Rinne Gaeltacht as well.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So it was quite. I think it was a 450,000 of a retrofit. So it was an extensive retrofit at the time. It really transformed and added on offices at the top and added on this section. It's incredible. So this was actually a very extensive retrofit. As part of the community hall upgrade, they put in 2 14 kilowatt air to water heat pumps. They've 7 kilowatts of PV on the roof. Internal insulation, you can see all of the new dry lining in here, and it was specialised dry lining because this is a sports centre. So from impact from footballs and basketball, so it's very specialised internal insulation, new windows, new doors. So it really was a brand new centre. And in addition, they built on the offices upstairs. We'll have a look now because they weren't there before that. So they spent over €500,000. 450,000 from Leader and then they got 25,000 from us. The PV was paid for separately. So over €500,000 of an investment here.
The walls are internally insulated. You can see here, and they're just sprayed with terylene, which is similar to a paint. A cavity behind there's probably
battens then.
they put battens, yeah. They put steel battens, the kind of H-frame battens. Then they put the insulation onto it, and then they put just spray it. And you can feel the thing. So it seems to be heavily insulated, going by the width of the wall. It's very cosy.
Yeah.
The whole room is very cozy.
Each of them 3 halls we've visited are really.
Yeah. And you see the ceiling has been insulated. You can see the sections of the ceiling as well. So.
Well, I have to say, an amazing day, because we covered so much ground in so few hours, but on such a beautiful day. But for me, the 2 standout buildings were this old schoolhouse, which was refurbished, and the community hall in Bangor. And I tell you why they've stood out for me particularly is that the integrity of the original fabric of the buildings were retained, and they're old, historically important buildings because they're vernacular and they're traditional, and to me they should be listed. In fact, they're so important. But the integrity, even through a refurbishment, was retained. In this building, for instance, an old suspended ceiling that was put in the 60s, which actually blocked out the beautiful trusses, was taken out, and they're now reinstated and are now visible, even though the entire ceiling is insulated. Fabulous job.
When we did the audit for you last year, what was the most, what did we highlight the most?
We highlighted the back roof, which was leaking at the time. And we highlighted the front windows, which had single glazing. And therefore a lot of heat was escaping through those windows.
Brilliant.
And then we had to look at the burners. And timing the burners.
Brilliant.
They were the 3 issues we had.
Excellent.
Well, the slope is such that we had, up until this summer, we had the slates, like that's on the main roof. Now they worked very well on the main roof because you have a good slope, but they weren't working on this flat section here. And what was actually happening is, when there was heavy rain, the rain was actually going back in under the slates because there wasn't enough of a slope to draw the water away. So then we had discussions with various contractors about what was the best option with the roof, with such a flat slope, and they've come up with this new cover. It's insulated, and it's a new system. I can't think of the name of it now, but it's suitable for the flatter roofs.
Did they remove all the slates?
They removed all of the slates and they insulated underneath that covering.
Wow. It looks fabulous.
Not only were we losing heat through the roof, but we were also suffering leakage. So it was a major problem. But it looks very well.
It does.
So fingers crossed now that that'll work out for us. And of course, straight away you can see we have high ceilings. And I think it was late in the 1970s. The school had fallen into disrepair completely. The roof was nearly gone, apart from the internal part. And there was an ANCO, do you remember the ANCO schemes?
Yes.
Well, under the ANCO scheme, they put what you could call a suspended roof, dropped down, and it went from one end of the wall to the other. So they had that right across the hall. And that was there for a few years. And it started to disintegrate over time. It dried out. So it was decided really that the best feature of all was hidden, which of course is the beautiful ceiling and the beautiful beams. And they're all part of the original old school. So, and they're architecturally, they're beautiful to look at. So I suppose the challenge that we face now is, how do you heat that open space and try and save energy at the same time? I suppose that's the challenge every group faces. How can you combine both? Especially with the older buildings. Now, one of the advantages of the older buildings is you have thick walls. And in our centre, they're stone. They're actually stone walls. And again, they're a lovely feature. But the windows we had, or when you were here, were single glazing. So they've been all replaced now.
Brilliant.
To double.
How did you get the funding for it?
Under the Community Centre Investment Scheme.
We retrofitted 6 national schools that year. And it was really challenging because we weren't allowed to do anything until the Department of Education okayed everything. And we didn't really have an engineer on site in 2014 and 2015, so we were working kind of blindly we should have had an engineer, but the Department of Education, as we were sending through plans from the contractors as we were going to tender, they were approving them one by one. So this school got internal insulation, a full attic installation, a brand new heating system. We replaced everything. They got a brand new boiler and we replaced all of the pipework and all of the radiators inside. It was an extensive heating retrofit and then obviously full ventilation and everything. But the befores and afters, I can send you pictures. We did a case study for SEAI on the 6 national schools and the before and afters here were unbelievable. And even now when we go back every now and again to do talks or whatever, the school just has a really new feeling. Like it's a very, very old school, but because of that extensive retrofit, it feels beautiful. The teachers were telling us that the kids could sit in the classroom afterwards not wearing jackets. Like the difference was unbelievable. So that's the best example of the schools that we did. And at the same time then the community halls, all of the community halls, when we asked them did they want help, they were dying for help. So at the time we were extraordinarily lucky because we basically had 100% funding. The Corrib gas pipeline had just started. The Community Benefit Fund was put in place. There was €8 million to be spent. Mayo County Council were overseeing the administration of the Community Benefit Fund. So whilst we got 50% funding from SEAI to do all the retrofits, we got 50% from Mayo County Council through the Benefit Fund. So we did like 14 community centres, 6 schools, lots of the Irish Wheelchair Association, the Western Care got 3 buildings retrofitted. We did it just because the money was there. So now when we're trying to do retrofits, now like as Mel will tell you later on, the co-financing is the most challenging part. Trying to get the other 50% or the other 25%, depending on where you get the money from, is really challenging. So we were just extraordinarily lucky that we have all these things to show because we had the money, we had free money to do it, and then nobody says no because it's an easy decision to get it done.
Basically, you can combine grant from the same source for the same measure. So the SEAI community grant is state exchequer sourced. So if you are going for another grant that is state exchequer sourced, you can't use it for the same measure. Now you can use it on the same project, but you have to be careful and clear, transparent about how you're using it. So you still end up left with net costs. When the RES Community Benefit Fund starts to roll out, then ideally communities should be, having a strategy for that. Identifying them early, having projects ready, having projects that you know are going to demonstrate value.
The idea of this workshop, we'll get through it quickly today. It is intended as more of a workshop, so generally it'll be delivered maybe over an hour and a half as a more interactive thing. There'll be stops and starts and people have something to do. But I'll go through the steps anyway. It's about guiding people through the concept of thinking about a project to getting to being ready to approach a project coordinator or to apply for grant funding. And most of you have been through it here, so you're not the ideal audience. It'll be more for a virgin audience, I suppose. So these are the steps. So we have at concept stage, you might just be picking the building or the project and determine whether that's your priority. The next stage is then once you have your projects listed, your shortlist, then you're into data collection. So you're looking for energy bills, as much building information as you can get, drawings, specifications, any recent modifications, any recent extensions, like the works that have been done here. Photos are a great thing to keep that and have that all in one place. Because this is aimed at the SEC's, the Sustainable Energy Community Programme, we're generally talking about energy upgrade retrofitting. So to do that, you ideally need an energy audit. There are not only 2 ways, but we discuss here 2 ways of getting those energy audits. The next stage then is moving on from your energy audit, getting quotations for the measures that were recommended in there, even though you might have estimated costs in there. And then you're into financing and project delivery. But at that stage there's a term that's thrown around a lot called shovel-ready. SEAI like to have shovel-ready projects that go into applications. The Community Climate Action Fund that we've heard about Again, the ideal is that you have a shovel-ready project as soon as that is open and you apply on that basis. The things to consider there are the capacity in your team. It's great if there's a local engineer, local architect, local mechanic, even electrician, plumbers that can advise you at that stage. It's really good to lean on them and bring them into the team if you can. And the bold point there is not to wait for the grant. Grants often open with small windows, so be prepared for it. And then, you know, are you shovel ready at that point? Now again, this slide here is more aimed at the energy master plans. So when communities come together and they've done an energy master plan, and at the back of that they've identified multiple projects. So we would say to any of our communities not to try and do everything at once. The projects we've seen today that Orla's talking about, you know, some would have been done together, but there's years of work there. And if it's the first time out, I would say start simple. And what I'm saying here is avoiding complex projects. And sometimes you might have the choice, but if you are doing an energy master plan, you have multiple buildings listed, and one of them is a listed building, protected structure, heritage. Move on from that. And that's a challenge. Take that the next time, or the third time, or the fourth time. Pick something simple to start to get used to the process. Again, for SEAI grants, they like to give money to high energy users. So if the building isn't used very much and it doesn't use very much energy, it's difficult to score well in an SEAI grant application. So pick the ones that are used the most and used by the community. So we'll do a workshop here, but we'll get over that at this stage. So then you're into data collection. So the ideal is keeping a file or a folder together. A lot of people now will be more used to using online files, you know, computer-based files, but there's nothing wrong with a paper file, there's nothing wrong with a hard copy file. If you're looking for drawings and specs, a common place to find them, that I found them for clients that didn't think they had drawings for a building, is on the local authority planning website. You know, if there's been a planning application in the last 8 years for a building like this, even if it didn't go through, there's probably some drawings in there. Now, they mightn't be great online, but at least you'll be able to see the architect or the engineer that did them, and you can ask for those drawings of them. We've had that with a few clients in and around the region where we found them drawings to start with. And that means that when you go and try to get quotations for wall insulation, for roof insulation, at least the person you're asking to quote will measure off the drawings. The energy information obviously is very important, so having your bills all in one place and being able to put your hands on them is excellent, but not just that, knowing what the heating system is, having photos of you know, the data plates on there, knowing whether you have three-phase or single-phase electricity, having a photograph of the meter is a good idea, and keeping general photos of the building all in one file. It's just a great way to have all the information in one place. So again, we'd have another workshop here where we'd start to put together that information ideally. So that's picking shortlisting your buildings, then doing some data collection on them, and then, you know, we need an energy audit. Now, you've had one done here. That was done as part of an energy master plan, yeah. Was it? Okay, so that's one way. So the EMP, or energy master plan, that's supported through the Sustainable Energy Communities Programme, that's one way to get it done. But there's also the support scheme for energy audit. So any organisation, even if they're, you know, not for profit, not commercial, sports clubs, anything like that, it can avail of this support scheme for energy audits as long as they're spending €10,000 a year on their energy. So that's electricity and heating. And that gives them a €2,000 voucher to hire a registered energy auditor to carry out a basic, but you know, a high quality basic energy audit. What will be in that will be an analysis of your bills. They will have done a visual inspection of the building. They'll list the significant energy users. They should note any particular building defects, and they'll give you a register of opportunities at the back, which is the measures they recommend, the estimated costs. So they'll try and give you an estimated cost against them, the estimated savings, and your simple payback on that. And at that stage, you do have a lot of information. If you've gone through those 3 steps, you could approach a project coordinator and get into an SEAI community grant scheme. So yeah, so that's your outcome there, and then there's another workshop to do with that if we have the audits. Now, getting quotations is challenging, and ideally you'd often need either, you know, good engage local suppliers who are willing to take a look at the building with it, as whatever information you have, or ideally you might need a professional at this stage. So again, a good project coordinator, they might charge for it, but it's still worthwhile getting it done to get you, proper quotations that can go into a grant scheme. So they'll firm up on the estimated cost of an energy audit and get you to that stage. But if you are trying to do it yourself, the two main things to do are tell the supplier what you have right now, so use as much information as you have and tell them what you want. And that's, you should base that on the recommendations in the energy audit report. You don't necessarily have to tell them how much insulation to put in, but if the energy audit report says bring the attic insulation up to common or current standard, a good supplier will know what that means. So they should be able to price on that. Okay, so then the question is, are you shovel ready? And then the next stage will be to find a project manager or project coordinator. That term project coordinator is a term that SEAI use for the organisations that they're used to working with in the SEAI Community Grant Scheme. Other SECs, you have a good network around here, and Orla will know them all. They can be good to aggregate projects and bring them all together into one application. And there's also the other grant and finance support. So we know that LEADER is coming. Local business sponsorship, you've managed to avail a bit of that here. The RES Community Benefit Fund then, that's what this stands for, as we were talking about earlier on. That's really valuable private contribution that can go in and match fund your grant sources. So financing. We often get asked about combining grants, so that's tricky. It's never all that clear, and you need to think strategically about it. What we would say is prioritise the one that is giving you the best percentage against your project, and then anything else you need to be transparent with them, but try and confirm up front that you can avail of theirs. So the general rule here is that you can combine grants from the same source for the same measure. So when I say source here, generally speaking, I'm talking about state sources or EU sources. So if you were, as an example here, where you could combine grants for a single measure, would be if you're installing, let's say, a large heat pump in a community building and the total was 30,000, and in your LEADER application you were getting 75% of that. So that would leave you with a net cost after the LEADER grant of 7,500. Because LEADER is EU sourced, you could then combine that with an SEAI community grant, which is state sourced, and that would provide 50% of the remaining. So of the 7,500, you could get another 50% of SEAI, leaving with the final net cost there of 3,500. So it can happen. It's tricky. In that scenario, we would definitely say get your LEADER funding first, get that secured, then go to SEAI and be transparent with them. Now, here's an example of combining grants for an overall project. And again, this isn't based on anything, it's just about thinking strategically. So again, if you were doing a large renovation, a whole building renovation on a community creche, and the total was 280,000, and you were able to get 75,000 from LEADER, that's 210,000. The recommendations there would be to use that for broader work, broader than the energy work, because SEAI grants are all about energy upgrades. So your other costs get from the other source, in this case LEADER, and then use the SEAI energy grant or community grant for any energy upgrades. So they won't fund new works, but they will fund, let's say, insulation of existing walls, replacement of windows, replacement of heating systems, things like that. That's it. That's the thing. Happy to take questions, but I know we're in a rush. I can say it's intended more as a workshop.
Well, the communities bring ideas to us, but for me, I can refer back to them and say, yeah, it's possible, it's been done here, it's been done successfully, and not in any half-hearted measure, completely and fully while retaining integrity of buildings.
It was organised fantastically. Orla, thanks a million for that. All of the different destinations that we got to, we learned so much from each of them, and they were all so individual and absolutely gorgeous. It shows what can be done with older buildings, you know, and it has left me feeling very high and knowing that, yes, we can do something if we get organised or whatever. Special thanks to Mel and for Eve for coming from Sligo, for Cormac from travelling from Dublin, and Johnny, our soldier from Lewisburg, Laura for the support you're giving all the time, and Lorna, especially in the Shared Green Deal. Thank you both so very much. And each of the people that are in charge of those buildings that we visited, that it really meant so much to us.